In late December 2011, a significant number of legislative amendments were adopted that appear to affect the rights to association and to peaceful assembly. I have observed that these amendments, which at times use ambiguous language, are fueling an overall climate of distrust and appear to violate international human rights law. International law imposes obligations on states to respect the right of every individual to associate freely, irrespective of their political preferences. Article 22 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, to which Georgia is a party, allows people to associate without undue restrictions, including for political purposes. This is intended to permit fair political competition in societies, enabling citizens to not only express their political views, but also give them a fair chance to change their leaders as they deem appropriate. To that extent, a level playing field in politics is necessary for the enjoyment of the right of association. The organic law on political unions of citizens, as amended, applies restrictions on every person in this country and those in business relations with them for the mere reason of holding political opinions. This violates the right to association and is potentially threatening to watchdog NGOs and civil society organizations whose work could be deemed political. Indeed, I am aware of at least 2 instances where NGOs have been requested to provide their books for scrutiny under this law, in circumstances that are less than transparent. This is causing unnecessary fear to NGOs that their right of association and their ability to operate freely, making their own decisions on political issues, could be compromised. While paragraph 3 of Article 26 prima of this law stipulates that these restrictions cannot be used against freedom of expression and civil engagement, that is not sufficient as a safeguard against potential abuse. NGOs and any legal entity and person must have the right to support any candidate or political persuasion of their choice. It would appear that these recent amendments have been motivated by a desire to control the political activities of a specific individual, rather than for objective and sustainable reasons. History teaches us that laws crafted for such subjective purposes often have the effect of violating human rights and are often unsustainable within changing circumstances of life. I have taken note of the government's explanation for this provision of avoiding the covert channeling of funds into political parties. However, I am especially perturbed by the fact that the law gives extraordinary discretional authority to the Chamber of Control to decide, in its own state of mind and without substantiating its decisions, and without clear criteria or even the possibility to appeal the decision, whether a legal or physical person is related to a political party. I must state, and state so firmly, that any monitoring authority on campaign finances needs to be transparent, impartial, and independent, and seen to be so in both its constitutive authority and in fact. I wish to also highlight that there have been long-standing concerns by regional bodies and the UN about the inability to distinguish between the ruling party and the state, which is especially relevant in light of the upcoming parliamentary and presidential elections. I reiterate that while the government has chosen to adopt rules to limit the financing of political campaigns, these rules should not be detrimental to the enjoyment of the freedom of association. As they stand today, these rules create an uneven political playing field and thus violate the right to freedom of association. This also applies to access to state resources, which clearly benefit one party at the expense of others. As long as there's no line between the state and the ruling party, this will continue to be a problem and lead to tension and divisions.